Here's what I'll tell you is Scandinavia appears to be about 50 years behind us if they're coming to antabuse.
Yes.
Antabuse does actually have that effect. It's a synthesizing agent, so it makes the liver very sensitive to alcohol. So when people consume or put on perfumes or use an alcohol wipe, they will get the red flushing, the nausea, and what that looks like. So what they used to do in our court systems back in the day was they would force people who were not interested in quitting to put them onto antabuse. It was like this idea that it was just the reward of getting drunk and why people used it. Well, unfortunately, what we've learned, at least in the States, is putting someone on antabuse when they want to keep drinking is very, very dangerous for them because you can drink through those adverse effects. And ultimately, then what happens is antabuse, because it's synthesizing the liver, it makes the damage to the liver happen 10 times faster than it would just from alcohol alone. So antabuse now in the States is counterindicated for people who are continuing to drink because you're actually facilitating the likelihood of mixing words again, liver necrosis and fibrosis along with cirrhosis as long-term effects. And so that would be outdated by our standards. I think if you're looking at new and motivating research now when it comes to alcohol use disorder, psilocybin is showing the most effective and now using the psychedelics to treat, right, substance use disorders. In fact, JAMA Psych released an article 8 months ago that showed that with people with alcohol use disorder being treated with 12 sessions total, so 3 preparatory sessions, 3 sessions of medicine, and 3 integration sessions, had a 50% decrease in use, that a year after stopping, we're not struggling with alcohol use disorder. So this is why psychedelics are getting major play around mental health and substance use disorders, and will challenge our field because a lot of people have had this narrative that abstinence is the only way, but recovery doesn't require abstinence. Abstinence is a business decision that was made politically, because what people don't ever really want to acknowledge about the dark ties to substance use is we've tied the value of the user to the substance that they use, which is why we have now tied specific substance use to specific ethnicity or racial identifications that then justifies treating those people different, which has ultimately led to mass incarceration of those people behind drug and alcohol laws or BIPOC peoples in our country. So it's a very complex narrative. When we look at the complexity of substance use, there's not a silver bullet. That's what I can tell you. Not one thing will work for any one person. And I think that this is what's really hard for people to understand about substance use. I don't see addicts and I don't work with junkies. I see Michael and I see Bonna, I see Catherine and I see Betsy. I come to it to see your story and to realize, right, that there's no one. I've worked with hundreds of people with substance use disorder, and I ask every single one of them at some point in their treatment, is this where you saw your life when you were 4 years old? Not one person has ever said yes. This is not a disorder that people get and go, whoop, I it. God, I wanted to get to the end of the line and I got it. It's shameful and it's very, very painful. And we don't let people step out from outside of that stereotype or that construction. And so I don't want to see you as something that I think you are. I want to know your story. Life got in the way. How'd you get here? Because I look at substance use more as a symptom of a greater issue rather than the issue itself. And that's why if you look at something like AA and a lot of recovery support networks, they'll tell you the first year is a gift. Getting clean is a gift. The real work starts after you're getting clean and you realize you can't run from those demons you've been boxing for years. And some people never box the demons. They just white knuckle for the substance. I just can't ever do it because I can't, right? Cool. I'm a firm believer that if you box the right demons, that what does that mean for substances? I don't know, right? I think you can say alcohol calls to me too much, so I don't play with it. But does that mean that I shouldn't have a relationship with cannabis or something else? That's not up to me to decide. That's up to the client to decide. But people aren't addicted to everything, and recovery doesn't require abstinence. So that was a super long answer to your question, but I hope it helps you understand the complexities of what we're talking about, that there really isn't any one thing that's going to be the magical wizard. And if I find that one thing, then I'll sell it for $1 and I'll still be a billionaire. But changing the narratives, right, is because really we need to help this population step from outside of the stereotypes that have been put on them. And really, if we get super clear too, we lowered the standards of care in working with this vulnerable population. There are people out there doing work and they don't understand the models they're working with. So it looks like this, right? If the biological model calls to you, great. But people go, it's a disease, it's a disease, it's a disease, and you're self-medicating. Okay. And our clients look at us and they go, you don't make sense. And it's a fair understanding because biological is saying you're altering your internal state of functioning. The self-medicating hypothesis is Kazakhstan self-medicating hypotheses, which is a psychological construction. So they're already in conflict in the models. And when our clients look at us and say, you don't make sense, we look at them and go, you're resistant. Come back when you're ready. When really their questions are fair, right? We have not held the standard that when people talk about the disease model, typically all people can say to me is you've hijacked reward circuitry. If you have no idea what that means, you are using a model you do not understand. And if I sat here and said, look, I don't know who Freud is. My school didn't really teach me about him. And EMDR, I know you move your eyes while you talk. I'm not trained in it, but I think I could do it. What would you think of my credentials? Many of you would be horrified to know you would share them with me, and you'd be looking for a new provider, and you should. But we haven't held the same standard here, right? If you can't say when you're hijacking reward circuitry that you're hijacking the ventral tegmental area, the nucleus accumbens, which are the on switches, and then the prefrontal cortex, which is the off switch to the reward circuitry, then you're using something that you do not understand. And so most people will use it as a defense rather than a way to be able to say, what does that look like? And so like when I teach Pharm 2, I'm trying to take something super complex and make it simple enough to use in the room. Because yes, most of us aren't going to sit in this space and be like ventral tegmental area, nucleus accumbens, prefrontal cortex, but you should know it enough that if our clients look at us and say, I don't think it's a disease, then we're not trying to convince them that it is, right? In our field, the choice versus disease debate is still happening. The disease model has not been proven. We have never found a gene for addiction. We cannot look at someone and say, oh, you have intergenerational histories, you're going to become addicted, because it's a 50% medium. 50% of people who have intergenerational histories become addicted, and 50% of people who have intergenerational histories don't. So we don't know what it is. And substances don't change your genome. They are epigenetic factors. They turn your genes on or off, but they don't change your genes. So this is what the big debate is right now and what the science is showing, even when we look at fMRIs. They thought the fMRI would do for psychology what the microscope did for biology. Unfortunately, it didn't. It made it very clear that what psychiatrists and doctors are claiming about the brain is not well understood. And it's the neuroscientists, Dr. Hart, Dr. Amen, Dr. Lewis, right, that are coming and saying, this narrative is held too long, and it's been held too long at the consequence of our clients. Some of our clients take these titles and they thrive, and some of our clients take these titles and they die, right? So we really need to be working with and understanding the client to know what is the right tool for the right time for the right person always, right? Because what we know we can't do, you can't save someone when they're dead. In this field, it hurts. In case no one tells you guys this, I do it in every class, so be prepared for it. I will ask you, how will you define your success as a clinician, not as your client's recovery? I will ask you how you will close therapy as a human being when they die or they go on the run, because we have a lot of jaded clinicians in our field, and I can always find them. They sound like this. Tigers can't change their stripes. Once an addict, always an addict. You have to want it in order to make a change. None of that is true. None of it. Absolutely none of it. And people do it because innocently they armor up. I will tell you all, it is hard to be in this area in our line of work because we burn out at 33% faster than anyone else because our clients die. And it is painful. It is painful when you know someone's story, when you knew what they wanted, what they hoped for, and they die. And so you got to know how to close that, right? And for me, I do a henna tattoo for every client that I ever get notified that I lost, because it helps me remember the relationship in that space is bidirectional. I am influencing them and they are influencing me. And I honor that. This is someone who has a face and a story whose loved ones are deeply aching that they will not see their loved one again. And then I can always send my hopes and my dreams and my prayers and aspirations, whatever language you like, right? That I hope always that they finally have the peace that they had been seeking. But it wasn't my lesson to learn or my lesson to hold. I wish I could make people get it. I hope you all know you can hope to make people get it, but you're just a tool in the toolbox. Cannot make people learn their lessons. And sometimes the greatest gifts for me is not when people say, hey, Thea, you saved my life. In fact, when they say that, I always say, no, I didn't, you did, right? You did the work. I'm a tool in the toolbox. But the greatest compliment to me in my work is when people say, you make me think. And that's what I do in trainings. That's what I do when I teach at universities. That's what I do in my own work, right? Is I want to be able to make people think. Because again, you don't have to agree with me. How would you work with me? Because if you come with me at just a basic understanding, I'm going to school you in what you think you know. And that's true of our clients too. They will school you in what you think you know. Because they've been snorting Wellbutrin for years. They know how to use all of our medications, which I would say are just drugs with different names, right? Same beast, different title. Psychopharm's been real good at making sure that we take things that we know people are using and putting it into a form that can be accessible to the masses.